Okay, give me just a moment. And we are live.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome back for our May 25th gathering for the Chiefs Advisory Committee. Certainly wonderful to see everybody collected here again together this evening. Thank you for spending your time with us, and for anyone watching on the live stream as well. Our hope is that in the near future, as we navigate our way forward in responding to the ongoing pandemic, but with the safety protocols in place, we are able to hopefully eventually in the near future be able to come together as a group for the first time. But thank you for all joining us tonight on this platform. And without further ado, I'll turn it over to our co-chairs, Judge Dwayne Maynard and Ajmiri Hawk.
All right, thank you, Chief, and good evening to everyone. It's good to be back with you all at another Chiefs Advisory Committee meeting. Want to say welcome back to Dr. Gadam and Courtney Ingram and Cam Justice, and congratulations to Courtney and Cam for finishing up some academic work. I know, Chief, that's what I thought. Congratulations to you guys. I'm glad that that's behind you, and glad that you're back in focus with us to try and do good work for the community. It's Tuesday, the 25th of May 2021, and I just prepared some initial thoughts that I wanted to share, because this is 1 year from the death of George Floyd in Minneapolis, Minnesota. His was a death that sparked a movement dedicated to discussing policing reform and discussions about racial and social justice, equity, and inclusion in our times. This inaugural Chiefs Advisory Committee finds itself involved now in our 9th virtual meeting, where we have committed to building bridges with our police department and the varied, diverse community groups and constituencies in Dublin that it has sworn to serve and protect. It is my hope in the course of this meeting that within the work that we do, we are able to take inventory of what we've done in these 9 meetings and the vision and or aspirational goals that we have that can identify positive change and positive direction for the Chiefs Advisory Committee, the police department, and this collective Dublin community as we try to build trust, transparency, accountability, and connectivity that betters all of our relationships with one another. So against that backdrop, Chief, if you would help me with the roll call tonight.
Yes, sir. Judge Maynard.
Present.
Ms. Ajmiri Hawk.
Present.
Dr. Shri Gadam.
Present.
Mr. Cameron Justice.
Present.
Ms. Susan Ortega.
Present.
Mr. Imran Malik.
Present.
Ms. Courtney Ingram.
Present.
Mr. Isao Shoji.
Present.
And Ms. Stella Vialba.
Present.
Very good. Judge, looks like we have 9 members present. And from our side of from the administrative side, Lieutenant Tabernick and Lieutenant Latanza are here with us today, as well as Corporal Howard and Officer McCloskey. And then Corporal Jay Stalgord has joined us again for the presentation this evening on body cameras.
Okay, great. Welcome to all of you guys. Right. The next order of business on the agenda would be the review of the amended minutes from our last meeting. asking if everyone had an opportunity to review the amended minutes. I would say publicly thank you to Becky Metcalf for not only preparing the minutes, but amending them. And I can tell you, Chief, that I did not have to take up much of Becky's time this month because she had done such a great job with the minutes. Anyone have any questions or potential corrections to the minutes?
Yes, Judge. One quick correction I have is I'm listed as present on the roll call, and I was not last month.
Thank you.
Judge, we will make that amendment on our end and make sure that's reflected appropriately.
Okay. Any other corrections or amendments to the minutes? If not, I would entertain a motion to accept the minutes as amended and corrected.
I move to accept the minutes as amended and corrected.
Thank you.
I second it. And I second.
Okay. Whoever's taking down the minutes, Esau, you're our second. All in favor signify by an aye.
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 And any opposed by a nay. Hearing no nays, the amended minutes as corrected will be approved and accepted tonight. Move on now to any old business. Rebecca, is there any old business that we need to take care of at this time?
I would just offer that I had mentioned having a shared calendar solution for all of us to combine different observances and holidays and events and things. The city actually has a new IT manager, so I'm meeting with him next week, and I will have an update probably for the next meeting, and we can get that underway then. So that's the only old business I have, but thank you.
All right. Thank you. Can you announce on our Chiefs Advisory Committee who this new IT manager is going to be?
Oh, yes, it's Michael Ferreira, I think is how you say his last name. And he's very collaborative, and it'll be a good partnership.
All right, very good. Thank you. All right, we're doing good. So let's move right into the Chiefs update to the committee.
Thank you, Judge. Good evening, members again. Just a few updates today. I wanted to, after our last meeting, I mentioned that we were going to have an opportunity to partner on an upcoming event. And so on May 15th, we were very fortunate and blessed to be part of the Community Against Hate event held here in Kaufman Park. And so I am going to actually turn it over to Lieutenant Tabernick, who helped coordinate our partnership on the event with APAPA, Ohio. And so I'll let Lieutenant Tabernick take you through what we were able to partner on that date.
Thanks, Chief. Yes, as Chief said, APAPA Ohio reached out and they wanted to have a community event and invite the police department, the fire department, other community staff, city staff to that event on the 15th. And they were having a rally to recognize a community as a whole against hate. And Miss Hawk was present. Mr. Malik was present as well. And on a side note, I got to talk to Imran at length, and I really appreciated that. We walked when we walked around Kaufman Park. We got a lot of FaceTime, and we got a lot of a really good opportunity to chat as people, and then also in solidarity with the community against hate. Just a couple pieces to note. Imran gave a very good speech. State Rep Beth Liston gave a very good speech as well. And I think most importantly, and Imran, I'm not trying to take anything away from you here, but I think most importantly, we had some Dublin City School students who gave a few very candid and moving speeches. I believe the youngest was actually in 8th grade, and they were very articulate students that provided a lot of perspective to the rally. So I know I appreciated that, and I think they brought a lot to the people that were in attendance there. As part of that as well, we always like to show off different pieces of the police department and get an opportunity for community outreach and engagement. So we worked beforehand. I worked with Vincent Wong to kind of brainstorm what were we going to do from a police department standpoint that would show off one of the things in our capabilities, and then also be something uplifting for the group. So with a lot of help from Officer McCloskey, who's on this call, we were able to do a drone demo, and then you saw on that PowerPoint, we were able to snap some pictures of the walk around Kaufman Park, and then the entire group made a heart. So we were able to capture those with our drone, and then otherwise talk about the capabilities of that drone. And just a real quick shout out to Vincent Wong and Greg Lamb and Nan Lee, who were exceptional to work with, very easy to work with, and a great partnership, not only that day on the 15th, but undoubtedly down the line. So fantastic community event, great weather, and I really had a good time personally, and I know that those that were with me had a great time as well. So just wanted to offer that for this group, and thanks for the time, Chief. Appreciate it.
And I'll send everybody that presentation.
Thank you, Lieutenant. Appreciate you recapping the events, and thank you for helping coordinate our involvement as well. Just wanted to give an update. As the judge mentioned at the beginning, the conversations about policing and policing practices are going on at many levels, at a national level and a state level, and certainly at our local level here. As I maybe mentioned to the advisory committee in the past, I have the occasion to be the Ohio Association of Chiefs of Police representative to the Ohio Collaborative Community Police Advisory Board for the state of Ohio. And so we meet on almost a quarterly basis to help develop the standards for policing in the state of Ohio. And we held our most recent meeting actually earlier this morning at online still, but we were able to get together and discuss some standards. The standard we officially moved forward past today was the Officer Wellness Standard, which will become a standard in the state of Ohio for agencies to have a policy relative to having officer wellness programming within their organization. And that will be a requirement to be certified by the Ohio Collaborative as a law enforcement agency in Ohio. So that was an important progression. That is something we're working on here in our department. Lieutenant Tabernick has been involved in our efforts there, and certainly informed by and in partnership with members of the advisory committee as well. And certainly want to give our thanks and gratitude to Ms. Ortega, who has joined us for a component of our peer support program in helping identify officers for and members of the organization in other capacities beyond our sworn capacity to have a peer support team here in the organization. But that is the progression this morning of a passing of a standard for the state of Ohio, and certainly very grateful that that went through today. The other couple of projected discussions that we had today as well related to, one was recruiting and the other was law enforcement interactions with juveniles. On that particular discussion and that standard, we had a number of presentations this afternoon to the advisory board. Gabriella Celeste, who is the policy director at Case Western Reserve, the University Schubert Center for Child Studies, gave a presentation on interaction and specifically law enforcement interaction with juveniles. And we also heard from a Sergeant Charmin Leon from the Cleveland Division of Police. She was a sergeant with the Cleveland Division of Police for about 4 years and has since moved on, and she is working for the implementation. She's an implementation specialist for ComStat for Justice, which is it's not with the police department anymore, but works with police departments on identifying policies and practices for law enforcement agencies. So those presentations were, again, important pieces of information for us to consider as an advisory board as we develop potential standards. And we actually moved forward with an initiative to develop a Ohio standard for law enforcement interactions with juveniles, which we will work on over the next several months and hopefully bring back a draft standard in September to talk about, to hopefully finalize then for policy for law enforcement agencies in the state of Ohio. And the last presentation from that meeting, I wanted to make sure I highlighted for the group tonight. We had an officer, Sarah Shendy, who was the law enforcement recruitment administrator through the Ohio Criminal Justice Services. So appointed by the governor last year, along with Dr. Patrick Oliver, who is with Cedarville University, in developing programming in the state of Ohio to help recruit specifically minorities and females into the profession of law enforcement. And we are very fortunate to have Lieutenant Latanzi sit on the advisory board for that state board for law enforcement recruiting as well. So just wanted to highlight those activities from that meeting today and give awareness as we have these conversations again locally. We're also involved and invested in those conversations at a state level, hopefully, again, as we've said in the past, making sure we're identifying not simply staying in past practices, but the best practices of our industry moving forward, and using the information, frankly, that we get from this group as an advisory committee to help inform those discussions at a state level as well. So just wanted to make everyone in the group aware of those progressions as well this evening. And then the last update I have between our last meeting and today, I want to certainly thank Judge and Ajmiri and Esau for their partnership in developing the bullet points we will talk about later as the aspirational goals for the community task force, but also want to thank Judge and Ajmiri for their work and effort, along with Rebecca, in putting together the update memo for council, which we presented to the council packet, and I got a chance to share a little bit of reflection with council on May 4th as an update for our progress as an advisory committee. So thank you to everyone on the group for your continued effort and engagement and assistance in helping us progress in our service here in Dublin as a community. And thank you to Judge and Ajmiri for helping us put together that update memo to council for May 4th. And that's all I have, Judge.
I have a question. It might extend your time.
I try to keep it brief.
It's really kind of, maybe you might not be able to answer it because it's probably something that's just in the works, but the law enforcement interaction with juveniles, you guys said that you're developing standards. Are you looking at, is there an example that you're looking at? Like how are we developing these standards?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And so part of the way the standards are developed is they typically begin with a conversation that is a presentation from either groups who are immersed in that particular field of expertise. And I'll give you an example, and I don't remember the professor's name, but she was a professor, I believe, out in Colorado, who had studied crowd management around the globe. And so she gave a presentation late last year to the group that helped inform the psychology of sort of crowd development and interaction, and in particular interaction with public safety or law enforcement, and understanding from those observations and studies, scientific studies, what the best way to navigate and manage a crowd is, and what some of the cautions are for the type of interaction that law enforcement might have in maybe causing reactive behavior or not accomplishing the goal of making sure that it is as safe as possible without regard for what's the right level of engagement and tactic during the ongoing event. So that was an example of a presentation that was made to the group and informed the development of the crowd control standard for the state standard that we passed back in December. On officer wellness, we had a presentation from some law enforcement agencies, and then also from some other professionals in the wellness field that helped inform the development of that standard. So as we move along, the start of the conversation really today were those two presentations on juvenile law enforcement interactions, and then taking that information, taking that back and digesting. And then Ohio Criminal Justice Services typically goes about then putting together the draft based on the information, but they also reach out to the members of the advisory board for their expertise or their perspective, at least, on developing that standard. So in the past, I have provided policies from the city of Dublin, from our police department, that have helped inform or at least give some perspective from a law enforcement lens to how we develop that standard moving forward. And that sort of answers the question. It's not really, we haven't formulated anything yet. That'll be what happens between now and the next meeting in September.
No, that helps give us an idea of where you guys are coming from. But thank you. And I'm sure you wanted to explain that too, because you didn't get into it the first time. So thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. I appreciate the question.
Just to have a general comment, I think that it's great, Chief, that both yourself and Lieutenant Latanzi are involved in the effort to try and influence policing practices throughout the state. And I think that it's great that you not only have, you two have your degree of input, but also you get to hear the thoughts and ideas for potential best practices from others throughout the state, and then can come back and certainly share them with the department. But I'm hopeful you will also continue to share those things with the committee. So that's great to know. Thank you.
Absolutely, Judge. Thank you for the time to provide the update this evening.
Okay. And before we move on, I'm going to ask the other community partners if there are any questions that you want to ask the chief about the subjects that he covered in his update. And I'm curious to hear from Imran what his message was to the group at the anti-hate event on the 15th.
Thank you, Judge. I greatly appreciate that, time to speak about it. I was actually going to ask earlier when we were covering the event itself. I think one thing we've got to mention was, the highlight of our event that was also very well appreciated by not only our police department and our committee members, but also the community at large that was present there, was a message from our chief. He was one of the speakers, and he spoke very eloquently and very, very firmly reassured that there's no hate in Dublin or in our community or in our vicinity. It was never there, and it will never be in future. So I think that messaging re-echoed with what Beth Liston kind of said, and also the city council member Cynthia Vermillion, who was also one of the speakers, mentioned, and so did I. Followed the same trade. One other thing, the 5 youth who actually spoke from the Apapa community, they are members of the Dublin Kaufman. Unfortunately, we don't have a video of that presentation, but I was able to get the audio of the entire speaking ceremony or the part of the event. That is available, and I was going to ask either Rebecca or Becky if that's okay, and that can also be shared on the our website as well, so the community can listen to that messaging that the youth actually brought. There was a lot of passion, a lot of hope, and a lot of optimism that they were able to portray and also eloquently deliver, which kind of really warmed up the entire gathering. And thank you to the police department as well for capturing the drone picture of the heart, which I don't know how they managed to do it, but it was wonderfully done. And as you can see, it also became pretty viral within our Dublin community as well. The messaging again over and over is that we have to continue building our outreach and bring support. And we don't have to reinvent the wheel. It's just finding partnerships and synergy points between the work that we all are doing. And thank you for this commission and the committee for all the great work that we are able to offer as service. And I look forward to learning a lot more with all your wisdom and all your leadership that's present on the call. And if I can take a quick 30 seconds, I just want to also include a personal messaging, if that's okay. Judges, okay, all right. I'm actually honored to start an 18-month journey of learning and service nationwide with the think tanks from different universities, academians, professionals, politicians, as well as law enforcement nationwide, which is coordinated by Kettering Foundation and the NEFI Institute. This is again coming out as a initiative that Kettering Foundation has undertaken. What happened on January 6th, at our nation's capital. Putting that into consideration, there's an effort to bring resources from nationwide, collaboration and do a research of 18 months to teach deliberation and how to defend the charters of our democracy moving forward. So I will be part of that nationwide, discussion and service work, and definitely will be reaching out to you all individually as well as collectively in next few weeks to kind of get your inputs and your thought processes and take it back to the think tank, and hopefully after 18 months, once it becomes published, then I can share it with everybody. I was actually chosen by the United Religions Initiative, which is the umbrella interfaith organization that works in USA and Canada and also internationally. They chose they actually chose me based on the work that I've done in the interfaith arena in the state of Ohio. So that was an honor and also a blessing, and also I feel like that's a contribution that so many of my friends and partners have done in the years, and I'm just humbled and honored to be serving in that capacity. So just wanted to share that with you folks. So thank you.
Congratulations and thank you.
Thank you, Doctor.
Yeah, I actually got goosebumps, Imran. That's great. Great news.
I have one comment and one question to the chief. Is it okay to ask?
Go ahead, Doctor.
First of all, Chief, I heard I was not present in the last meeting, but I saw the minutes, and police reaching out to the leaders of the community. I mean, that goes a long way, and thank you for doing that. And my second question is, in addition to reaching out when the event and the bad things happen, is it possible, maybe part of your operations, maybe once in a month or whenever you feel like, just kind of talking to those same leaders? I mean, you're doing this in this group, but whoever you have reached out, maybe just one phone call will make a lot of difference. It's all about outreach and building confidence, and because they talk to people, right? I mean, just it's spreading the word. Dublin police case, and they really want to do something like proactive approach. I don't know how it's going to be work politically and with a lot of stuff going on in your world, and we know police are very busy, and just wanted to ask you and see if it is possible. You don't have to answer now, but just kind of it's a suggestion.
No, it's a great suggestion. Certainly, as much as we can try to engage, and as much as I can make myself available to engage, I try to at every turn be there. If there is a group that wants to have some conversation about our police department and the American Indian Business Group was a meeting that we've had that they invited me to, and invited us from the city. But I got to provide again, and the reason I want to reflect it in this meeting is I want you to know how proud I am to share that we have this advisory committee and the members of the advisory committee to come together and to help have those conversations with us about the expectations of policing in Dublin. I also had the occasion to go to St. John's Lutheran Church last Thursday on Rings Road and have a conversation as a panel with Chief Eric Greil from the Hilliard Police Department. So he and I got a chance to go and sit last Thursday evening and answer questions for that group as well. And so, but you're right, Dr. Dam, if there is a way for us to more efficiently have those connection points, certainly as much as I love having those conversations, I also want to make sure that the public knows all of our members are available to go and have those conversations as well, and to think through for our perspective as administration, how we can find the right means and mechanism to be able to communicate en masse regular updates to the public on our activities as well. And so one of the things I think you'll see folded into those aspirational goals, as we discuss that later today, is how we make sure we have a regular mechanism to project our activities and our accomplishments and our progress in our goals regularly to the police department, in addition to to the community from the police department, in addition to providing those resources about our police department in one place where the public can go and collect that as well.
I think that's great. I mean, even better than what you suggested. I think we're going to the groups and all the communities at some point they meet together, 20 or 30 people or even more. Maybe that's the best way to take their feedback and just kind of, sometimes it's all communication which matters. I mean, the awareness and people feel, okay, just police is working for us rather than just in my experience, all about learning about each other makes us all people and well educated. Thank you.
That's a great suggestion. I'm remembering now, just off the top of my head, the meetings we've had over the last couple of weeks. We met with Dublin, Visit Dublin. So we met with all of the hotels in Dublin on a virtual meeting last week to provide some information on crime prevention and to make some connectivity with the staff at those hotels. Lieutenant Tabernick has reached out to the Chamber of Commerce to make sure we schedule a meeting with small businesses in the near future. We have a meeting scheduled I think next week with the Ballantrae Homeowners Association. So as groups are comfortable coming together again, we are certainly offering in every direction possible. Is there an opportunity for us to come and sit with residents, with community stakeholders, with business owners, so that we can have that conversation in person to talk about their, again, expectations and questions about policing, but also to share some information on how we're making sure we keep them safe and protected in Dublin as well.
Thank you, Chief.
All right, anybody else? Right, let's move then into new business, and we're obviously going to save the aspirational goals for later in the meeting, but is there any new business that we need to address either as current event, in terms of current events, or Juneteenth recognition? And I know the second one would be one that Rebecca, you would lead us on.
Yeah.
I
you go.
would say before Rebecca starts, just as a current event.
Yes.
I know Dublin started DORA last week, and I wanted to just kind of touch on how the police department is responding to DORA, what kind of preparations they're making. This is a very local issue. It affects all of us. So I just want to make sure our community members know what you guys are doing for that.
Great question. I am actually going to turn it over to Lieutenant Latanzi, who has coordinated our efforts during the pilot program in our officer assignment and efforts to keep everyone safe there.
Thanks, Chief. Just as an update, Ashmiri, and to the rest of the committee on our efforts with the DORA. Again, we were heavily involved in the planning efforts with our team here at the City of Dublin. We also have a meeting, I believe, later this week with Crawford Hoying, just to touch base with them on that Bridge Park area and some of the activity in the area, especially with the increased patrons that the DORA may bring to downtown. As a police department, we've increased our staffing efforts for the initial phase in of the DORA and the pilot program. So we had additional officers both in the Bridge Park DORA and as well as the historic Dublin DORA. Also had our drone up over the weekend just to try to gauge what kind of activity we may see and an increase in activity from the DORA. I'm happy to report that we did not have any significant issues during the first week. We will continue those efforts for the next few weeks, and then throughout the pilot program for us to report back to city council in regards to any safety concerns that we have seen from the pilot of the DORA. So I don't anticipate that we will, but we surely are going to be engaged in those efforts and keep an eye on that area to ensure the safety of all the patrons that are enjoying that area down there.
I have one question, or just comment, pertaining to logistics. I don't know who can answer this, but is it so? As far as the link bridge, there can you take your drinks across that bridge? No. Okay.
No, right now, so they specifically have broken up those two districts for the pilot program. So Bridge Park has a designated DORA area, and then there's actually a separate one for historic Dublin. So the bridge is not included currently, and I think that will be something that will be discussed at a later date after the pilot program is complete as to whether that's included or approved by council in the future.
Okay. And then as far as the dates go, is it just through the summer?
The pilot right now is scheduled to go through August, and it's Thursday, Friday, Saturday from 5 p to 10 p.m. are the current times for the DORA. Council is going to revisit the issue, I believe, in August to determine whether or not the DORA stays and whether there needs to be any modifications to the hours and the area of those specific DORAs.
Thank you.
Judge, I'll go ahead and talk about Juneteenth. Part of all of the work that all of you do, we want to make sure that we're promoting it from the city. I didn't know if anyone had any initial thoughts or ideas about a message that they would want to share on that day. We could do anything from a written message, from the Chiefs Advisory Committee, to a video message if anyone had anything specific they would like to share about the day and the history. And we can also do a joint message with the community task force. So Esau, I don't know if you had heard anything from your group, but the world is wide open, and I would be very happy to message anything on that day, and we can start on that promotion soon. Does anyone have any thoughts?
There was no specific discussion around Juneteenth in our last meeting, so any coordination will likely need to be done through the chairs and the leadership for that to happen.
I personally think that our African American brothers and sisters should lead the discussion on Juneteenth and how they best want all of us to celebrate it with them. If they do, I don't want to presume anything, and I think that we can reach out to maybe leadership in the city and try to coordinate something with them, and of course, leadership here in this community too. Thank you.
And Becca, this is Imran. I like the idea of video messaging. So I guess maybe if we can, as a leadership community, can have some messaging, and of course, as Mary mentioned, that our African American brothers and sisters can probably, and the leaders can lead that video messaging as well. That'd be pretty strongly perceived, because at the end of the day, everything is driven through social media these days. Maybe a 30, probably a minute or minute and 20 seconds long stretch will be excellent. I think if you can create some messaging around that.
Thank you.
I'm interested to hear any input, Cam or Courtney, that you might have to offer.
Yeah, I share as Mary's sentiment about allowing our Black brothers and sisters to head that up. And I think extending that out as far as we can in terms of our connections in the community would be helpful.
I don't have a strong opinion, I would say, at this point. I think that conversation caught me off guard a little bit, as I forgot June was coming, and it's here. So, so th- I I mean I second, third, fourth, what everybody was saying. As far as how that looks, I'm not exactly sure. Social media is powerful, and I think that probably the best way to get that information out to everybody. But as far beyond that, I'm not sure on exactly what that might look like. So I would be open to listening or being a part of whatever takes place. But I think what everybody said is on the right track.
And I'm happy to work with our group. We don't have to have a joint message if that makes it easier. So I will work with our leadership here, and if you have any other ideas after the meeting, we can get together. And I'm happy to set up any filming if that would be of interest, or even if it's just a written message and sharing some historical facts or whatever it is. I will be your person. So thank you, everyone.
Okay, well, we're not going to be finished just yet. So let's say that we're able to do this, and we have something that's a minute to a minute and a half long to present. How much time do we need to allot for filming and preparation so that this would be a message that could go out? It would be what, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday,
It would be a
17th.
Saturday.
I know yes, I know that Juneteenth is Saturday, the 19th of June. I know that. But I'm saying in terms of if we had a message, would it just be a message that ran for a day, that day, or would it be a Thursday, Friday, Saturday?
Oh, I apologize, Judge. Yes, sorry. I would put it out on Saturdays, but that can be scheduled, so that's no problem. It would just be for the day. It could be on different channels or different platforms. But for filming, if we could film 2 weeks to a week beforehand, that would be helpful.
Okay. So, in terms of what we might do separate from the community task force, we can have a discussion about that. And we can have a discussion, I guess, with their leadership, if Esau would again help to facilitate a potential conversation with them. And then we would have to do it. We're at Tuesday. We'd have to do it within the next 10 days or so. And just Courtney and Cameron, are you guys going to even be available? Courtney, I know that the school year is coming to an end, and I know that my wife mentally is ready to take time off. So if that's the mindset that you have as well, I'm certainly not mad at you about that. And if you're not thinking that this is, hey, maybe we'll discuss this within the next day or two. How about that? We don't have to be online to have this particular discussion. And then Rebecca and Shmiri and Chief, I can get back to you guys. I'd say, Rebecca, not later than the second or third, if you'd give me a week from tomorrow, the second or third of June, we can talk about this. And if we're going to do something, start to put it together, if not have it together by then. Is that okay?
Yes, thank you so much.
All right. So Cam and Courtney, I'll be in touch. Okay. We're going to move then into presentation on body worn cameras. Is someone speaking? I don't have any audio.
I believe they're still getting ready.
Yeah,
Okay,
I
thank
think Corporal Dalgard's working on it, and I think I've gotten a couple messages from Cam and Susan that I have to click on something, but I'm not seeing it. Is there anything I can do to make the view better?
You would think that me being 23, I would realize that it was my screen that was giving me that notification, not
Hey,
yours. No
Cam,
worries.
it wasn't just you. I did the same thing.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's so I apologize. I went through the last one really fast because I thought I'm doing it incorrectly, so I apologize. But yep, I'm glad. Thank you.
No, you're good.
I think Corporal Dalgard is having some audio issues again, so he is trying to work through those as we speak.
All right, I think I got it working. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
All right, perfect. All right, glad we could work that bug out. So I'm Corporal Jace Dalgard. I'm currently running the body worn camera program for the department. Work first shift. I'm one of the supervisors there. So I was asked to put together this short presentation. So we're going to go over some things as far as the history of the body camera program, operation of the body cameras briefly, some policy, and then hopefully take any questions there at the end. So unless anybody has any questions to start, I'm going to get started on this. All right. First slide, please. All right, so a brief history of the body camera program. Prior to 2017, the Dublin Police Department did not have a body camera program. We had cruiser mounted cameras, which obviously have limitations and they can only pick up what's going on in front of the cruisers. You had an audio pack that also had a limited range. And if you're outside of that range, you weren't going to be able to pick up basically anything that was going on outside of the front of that cruiser. So inside a house or inside a building, it wasn't really effective. So in 2017, we began testing body cameras, and we started with the Axon camera, which is made the same company that makes the tasers. So it kind of made sense for us, since we already have a working relationship with Taser, to start with that as far as the test goes. We did have some issues with them as far as low level light. So if we were in the dark, which we operate basically half the day in the dark, not very good video quality. The two-piece cameras that they had were bulky and hard to operate. The camera was mounted in a weird spot, and there was some issues with the redaction software as well that was reported from our record staff. So we continued testing into 2018, where we started testing the WatchGuard body cameras, which we currently have. At the time, Columbus Police were using WatchGuard cameras on, I believe, a test basis as well. There were other agencies around that were using them. So we purchased 8 body cameras, 3 cruiser cameras, and set everything up to operate a test alongside the Axon cameras. And we ended up finding that the WatchGuard produced a better video quality, especially in low level light. The camera functioned pretty easily. The redaction software worked better. And we were also able to store all our data on site, which is something that Axon did not allow us to do. And the cloud storage through Axon was quite expensive. So we decided to implement the WatchGuard cameras, or choose the WatchGuard cameras as our camera of choice. So next slide, please. And by 2019, the end of 2019, we had all patrol officers issued a camera. So anybody that wore a uniform on patrol, that was first, second, and third shift patrol, as well as our CIU traffic unit, were all issued body cameras and required to wear those while they were on duty. And then in 2020, actually December of 2020, we finished issuing body cameras out to all sworn personnel. So that's currently 70 sworn officers at our agency that have body cameras issued to them. That includes administrative staff, plainclothes investigators, our detectives. Everybody has a camera that's available to them for when they're working. Next slide, please. Briefly on the operation of the body cameras, the ones we use are very simple. They have a single record button on the front of the camera. It's very large. It's easy for the officer to find. You push that button and it begins recording. That same button is used to deactivate the camera by using a double click, and then they're able to classify the video when they're done recording by just using this single button on the side of the camera. So pretty easy to use. It's mounted on the front of the officer's uniform. They have a couple different mounts they can use to mount those on their vests. The neat thing about it is it completely integrates with the cruiser cameras that we also purchased at the same time as the body cameras. So when the cruiser cameras are activated, for whatever reason that might be, turning the lights on, if the vehicle's involved in a crash or it exceeds a set speed in the system, the camera automatically turns on and turns on the body camera as well. So pretty easy to use, and video that's stored on there is completely inaccessible to anybody. The only way the video gets taken off of that camera is when the officer gets back at the end of their shift. They place the camera in a dock and it uploads from there. So next slide, please. Policy related to the use of the cameras. Policy currently states that when working patrol, CIU traffic, or certain special events or special assignments, or at the direction of the chief, officers will wear a body-worn camera. The camera will be activated as soon as practical. Anytime that an officer is taking an enforcement action or is engaged in an investigative contact, whether that's a suspicious person, traffic stop, whatever that might be, the camera will be activated. For any contact that becomes adversarial after an initial contact, or any time that the supervisor on duty requires officers to turn on those cameras. Also important to note that each recording has a time delay, which is set currently on the body cameras for 30 seconds prior to the activation. It'll capture video but no audio. And for the cruiser cameras, it's set to 60 seconds. So it'll collect 60 seconds of video without audio prior to the activation of the cameras. Next slide, please. Deactivation of the body cameras. So it can be deactivated at the officer's discretion when it's no longer necessary to document a scene or incident, or after having taken enforcement action or completed your investigative contact. So once the officer is done with their investigation, they can turn off their camera and move on from there. When interacting with a person who's seeking to report something anonymously to law enforcement, or when they're engaged in a privileged communication with attorneys or union representatives. It's important to note that if a camera is turned off at any point during a call, that the deactivation of the camera, the reason for the deactivation of the camera, and it's all should be documented in the CFS and/or incident report. I saw a question pop up there on the bottom. CIU at traffic unit is our community impact unit. They are the traffic unit that specifically focuses on traffic enforcement throughout the day. So again, uniformed officers in patrol cars, but their primary function is traffic control. So thanks for the question.
Thank you. Thanks.
Yep. Next slide, please. Policies related to data storage. So we retain our video and audio recordings according to the guidelines that the Dublin Records Commission sets forward. Any response to resistance incident, any motor vehicle pursuit, patrol car accidents, OVI arrests, anything that has any evidentiary value or anything that's going to result in a formal citizen complaint or has resulted in a formal citizen's complaint is saved, and it's required to be saved by the guidelines set forth. That can be done by a supervisor creating a case and we'll talk about the retention periods here later, but creating a case within our evidence library which retains that video. So if you go to the next slide, please. So this is the retention timeframes. So when an officer completes recording, they have 4 options to choose from on their camera. That's a training or demo, unclassified, evidence, or evidence response to resistance. As you can see there, we keep our training and demo for 90 days. That's usually what we use the training and demo category for is new hires when they go through FTO training, or field training officers. When they're going through their training, they have to go through practical days, and we want them to train like they would be acting on a normal day. So we require them to use their body cameras throughout that period of time. So when they're done with their scenario, they would categorize that as training and demo, and then that's used later on to review that scenario day, so they can evaluate how they did during that scenario and talk through it with the sergeant. That's basically what that category is used for. Others would be demoing for a class or somebody who's interested in seeing how this works. Unclassified, it's usually something that hasn't resulted in any criminal activity or criminal enforcement taking place, or it's a traffic stop maybe. Those are kept for 180 days. Anything that's classified as evidence or is a response to resistance is kept for 10 years. Important to note that that is a minimum amount of time that video is retained, and it can be retained for longer periods if it's necessary. Next slide. So policy currently requires documented reviews for these 4 categories here: response to resistance, pursuits, reports of meritorious conduct, or citizen complaints. Basically what a documented review is a supervisor will take a look at any of the body-worn camera footage or cruiser footage that's related to one of these incidents. They will have to make sure by watching that video that training is being followed, that policy is being followed. They have to forward a memo up to the bureau commander, and it's reviewed from there. The chief and Lieutenant Latanzi can probably speak a little bit more to this, but we're talking about a change in policy that would essentially have more documented reviews done throughout the year. And again, I would leave that to later discussion, but that would be something we're talking about here in the near future as far as a change goes. There are more times when we review body camera footage, especially as supervisors or as trainers, when we have an incident that maybe doesn't meet one of these 4 categories, where we're reviewing something on a more informal basis. And I have to say, from a training standpoint, it's excellent to have these body cameras. Moving to the next slide, please. Just to give you an idea of how much video we capture during a year period, this was as of April 14th, 2021. 12 months prior to that, the Dublin Police Department recorded 45,891 events for a total of 10,565 hours of video and audio, 5.1 terabytes of data, and that resulted in 2,279 cases being created in evidence library. Again, those are all stored on our personally owned, personally controlled hard drive here within the city, maintained by the City of Dublin IT. So just a number of recordings. I think when you look back on that, it's a larger number than I thought it was going to be. But that's just to give you an idea of how much those cameras are used throughout a year. As far as the body-worn camera program goes, it results in an increased accountability between officers and supervisors, definitely reinforces positive interactions, transparency within the community, definitely assists with reviewing citizens' complaints and accommodations, because you have a firsthand, essentially, view of what was going on during that incident. From a training perspective, it gives us a great opportunity to review the tactics and techniques that we are training as training officers, to maybe see if we need to make any tweaks to our training or changes to policy. For gathering evidence at scenes, it's useful there. Yeah, just overall, I think that the cameras have been very beneficial to the agency. So Any questions for me? I know that was quick, that was brief. But if anybody has any questions,
I have a question. So being a technology guy, just curious to learn or understand, is there any data analytics or artificial intelligence? I mean, just because you have so much terabytes of data, do we do anything? I know it's very advanced stage, but just do we have any plans or anyone doing in the country? Like machine learning, right? I mean, just if something happened and just kind of, it's complicated subject. I don't know, it takes a lot of budget for W itself, but just kind of, Chief mentioned long time back, the communications with the, I believe FBI and all this stuff. I mean, does anyone do anything with the data?
Data.
Yeah, right. Go ahead, Corporal. I'll follow up once you get a chance.
The data that we're collecting is basically the video and the audio of it. We don't have any analytics really beyond that I'm aware of. The data I pulled from you it comes from the system that we use, which is evidence library that's provided by WatchGuard. So that kind of gives us an idea. But there's no, no, I don't believe there's anything that would be to the level that you're describing. So,
thank you.
Yeah, Dr. Gunn, I mean, that's an excellent question. And in a lot of fields, data analytics and software capacity to then data mine the information you're collecting or the data you're collecting to turn it into information is certainly a growing field. It's not anything that's available through this vendor at this time. And I'm not aware of any other police departments that are using any sort of software to sort of scrub through their existing body camera video. It sort of gets collected and then set aside and then is accessible for those occasions where we need to go back and review it or produce it for either evidence in court or on the occasions we get a media request to be able to put that together and then share what occurred in the event, but sort of an active pursuit through the data as far as software. I'm not aware of anything currently, and certainly if anybody on this group becomes aware, it's something we would be able to look or be willing to look into. It's just not something that's part of our programming right now. That being said, I think there is an opportunity out there to consider what are we doing with the video beyond, again, just using it as record of those contacts. But hopefully there'll be some progressions in the near future to help inform. As the corporal said, I mean, it's excellent for training from a training perspective to analyze, what are the things that we're doing well from a point-to-point contact with a supervisor and an officer having that conversation, or even officers reviewing it themselves. If there's any sort of software that helps on the back end us learn what we can from those videos and help, again, inform our training moving forward or even our activity and responsiveness in protecting the city, that's something we would be interested in understanding as well.
Thank you, Chief.
I had a follow-up question as well, specifically about the technology, and I was just curious. So for clarity, I was wondering about the playback feature and if there's a specific reason as to why there's no audio during that playback time. And again, mostly because I don't understand it. Is that a technological reason? Is there a specific reason why there's no audio during that playback time?
Yeah, not from a technological standpoint, I think there's an additional ability for us to make adjustments there, but from the standpoint of things that could be occurring, I think private conversations before an event that occurs, I think is mainly how that thought process got played out. And Chief, if you had anything to add to that.
No, I think that's exactly, the way we have considered that technology previous, that we can go back and capture the video. We do have the equipment itself has the ability to be adjusted, so we could include that. But we also are trying to balance that intention of capturing those events at the time when those events occur. So the look back gives us a walk into an event where an officer may not have engaged with that person yet before they activate the body camera. So you can see the progression coming up. And if an event occurs, they can go back and capture the video once it starts and it's actually getting the video. But opening that audio up, we have to pick a point where we decide all right, now we're going to start capturing everything that is happening from the officer's perspective and everyone else around them. And so I think we just, when we started it, we were following sort of, and frankly, there are still, we were still early, even though we were 2017. So it doesn't seem like it's that long ago. We were still very early sort of in testing as far as an agency, testing and then rolling it out to our officers. So I think they're still learning along the way. But our initial perspective was, as the corporal suggested, some of those private conversations that are occurring, whether they be just officer to officer or in the office or, you know, with somebody, and then an event occurs and then the officer activates the body camera and now they're recording an interaction with somebody who was either peripheral initially or it became an event the officer decided or needed to, by either policy or based on their perception, needed to activate and record. Capturing that audio before the encounter occurred was just something we made a decision. We're going to start the video with a 30-second look back, but the audio will start once it picks up and the officer knows that they have activated that camera.
Are you guys moving towards more of like an automated, we're going to start automatically with every interaction, or is it still like the officer has to choose to turn it on?
Corporal, did you want to talk about any of the automatic triggers or talk through in the PowerPoint presentation about when the cameras activate based on an event or an action taken by an officer besides them just pressing the record button?
Yes, the policy currently requires that an officer turn on if they're taking any enforcement action or they're involved in any kind of interaction that's going to result in legal action or potentially could or would be evidentiary value there. On top of that, there are some automatic triggers that turn the body camera on. Those would be anytime that the overhead cruiser lights are turned on, when the camera is synced with the cruiser camera in the car. So if an officer is responding to an emergency call and they activate their lights and sirens, as long as that camera was synced at the beginning of shift, which they should be doing, that camera will also turn on will trigger the body camera to turn on. The same thing occurs if that vehicle is involved in a crash or if they don't have their lights and sirens on and they're traveling above the set speed within the system, those cameras will turn on. So there are some automatic triggers that will turn the body camera on, but for the most part, it's following the policy and procedure that's laid out by us, and which we are actually in the process of doing some modifications to, where the officer is required to turn it on for certain events.
Ajmeri, to answer that additionally in that question, one of the considerations are what additional automatic triggers are there available. And with this body camera system, what we have is just the activation of the overhead lights and siren. There are or have been some promises by other vendors that when an officer were to, for example, draw their weapon from their holster, the body camera would activate. That is not something that's available with this platform. I know that Axon's version of that of their camera promised that, but I will tell you early on they weren't able to deliver that for all of the cameras that they were shipping out to agencies. So it wasn't quite there at that time. One of the things, and if Corporal can speak to it, that we've had conversation about as we have, again, revisited the policy, because it's been a bit of time since we introduced the technology to the organization, was the ability, us understanding fully the ability to go back and capture video from a body camera if the officer missed the opportunity to activate it during that event. And so we are still trying to figure out what our capacities are and where it extends and what it doesn't extend to, so that we understand if we missed an event, do we have the capacity to go back and capture that still at a later time when we know that would be advantageous for us completely understanding the event, even though the officer didn't activate it. So Corporal, can you talk just a little bit about that?
Yeah, so WatchGuard has a feature that's called record after the fact. It's something that's available. It works on the body cameras as well as the cruisers, where it is basically recording on a continuous loop. And as the hard drive overwrites, it basically will overwrite when it reaches a certain amount of data that's been stored on that hard drive. So it's constantly recording on a loop. If an officer were to have missed something, maybe there was a car that was leaving the area of a scene and they didn't realize that was the car, but they get to the scene and somebody says, hey, this vehicle just fled the scene and there was a suspect in there that did whatever crime. The officer may remember, hey, I saw that car. We can go back and capture that video so long as it hasn't been a certain period of time. For the body cameras, it's maybe 12 hours. The cameras have more storage. I won't be able to tell you the time frame that's involved in that, but the ability to go back and recover data from both body cameras and cruiser cameras that may not have been recorded on a previous activated by the officer.
How do you monitor inappropriate use of body camera? Maybe an officer shouldn't have taken video of something and it's not incident, or it's not an arrest base, but they did. So how would you monitor that? How would you make sure? Because I believe you're only reviewing video for four types of situations, and if it doesn't fall into those situations, how would you know?
I guess I'm trying to think of an example where that would be the case, where the officer wouldn't have been recording or shouldn't have been recording.
I'm a former prosecutor, so I had to deal with a few police departments. One example is just an officer would go into conversations and would automatically start recording, and then he would review the conversations because those conversations had nothing to do with an incident or anything like that. It was just office conversation that he would record, right? And that's an inappropriate use of our taxpayer dollar body cameras. So how would you, what are the systems in place to make sure that those things don't happen?
And so we have policy that would preclude that from being okay, obviously. But as far as monitoring that, it would be hard to just say that there was an inappropriate recording without being alerted to the fact that recording exists. Yeah. But again, policy does address that surreptitious recording of private conversations between employees. It's not something that's allowed, and it would be something that would be, we would be able to enforce discipline on in that situation. But I can't think of a way that we would be able to track whether or not that was occurring unless we were reviewing every single body camera video that comes across the desk. Which, as you can see, there's a lot of video there to review. So.
That's a really good question, though, too. And back to the corporal's point during the presentation, again, as we introduced the technology, we knew as an agency sort of early into as widespread a use as we have within our organization, we have both the opportunity but obligation to make sure we're learning from the experiences over time. And so one of the conversations that we've had recently is how do we progress our policy so that we are answering some of those questions we didn't know to ask, even as we slowly implemented it over a couple of years. So I'll ask Lieutenant Latanzi if he doesn't mind jumping in here to talk about some of our thoughts on revision so that we are more systematically capturing our review of body camera video from a supervisory level, because we want to give credit to the good work that our supervisors are already doing. They're already using the body camera video to help review our officers' performance, for making sure that, again, as we've talked before, that we are delivering on what our expectations are based on our policy, and also capturing on those occasions where it's absolutely appropriate to highlight an officer's exceptional work in serving the community. So our supervisors are already engaged in that, but we wanted to make sure we were more intentional at capturing what our expectation is from the supervisors in regular review of the video. So I'll let Lieutenant Latanzi talk about some of the work he's been doing on the policy as future edits.
So as the chief and Corporal Dalgord mentioned, we do have some revisions started to work on specifically as it relates to your question, Asmiri, about the reviews. So what we found when we were looking at the policy is that we really weren't capturing in policy the number of reviews that are often done by our supervisors that look at many more videos than the ones that we require the supervisors to look at, those more higher threshold events that we want to ensure that we're doing a documented review on. What we find is that supervisors are regularly reviewing that camera footage, probably on a daily basis, just to ensure that the officers are either getting credit for sound activity that they're working on through the street, or to help give officers advice on how to manage and investigate cases, and just do good thorough reviews that supervisors regularly do to help encourage officers to do good work. So as part of that, we took a look at our reviews and what we thought was maybe a better reflection of that. So we are looking at an amendment to policy in regards to reviews to ensure that every employee has at minimum a review from a supervisor every quarter, every trimester. So we have an early warning system. I'm not sure we've talked about it a whole lot with this group, but it is a way for us to capture certain activities that officers are engaged in, and then for us to be able to look at that activity to ensure that there are no patterns of conduct that we need to be concerned about. So we capture pursuits, use of force, complaints, discipline, and counselings as part of the early warning system, and those are reviewed on a trimesterly basis by the first line supervisors on the shift, and then that review comes up through the bureau commanders and to the chief. So we felt like the body worn cameras should probably fall in a similar review process in those videos. So the supervisors would be required to review at minimum one video for every officer during that trimester that is on their shift. And in addition, if there were no videos that were captured by that officer, say they were in maybe an assignment that didn't regularly capture body camera footage, that those officers would still be asked by their supervisors to conduct a function test of their camera to ensure that it was working properly and they were familiar with how to operate that in case they were to use it during a different shift.
I have a question on I guess how the videos are kept and who has access to it. I assume these are videos that are ultimately subject to, I guess, public record requests if people were to make them. And it sounds like the officers are doing a great job in capturing many interactions, which is great to hear. I'm assuming that the custody of the videos is such that there's no dispute as to whether something actually existed, but maybe isn't there anymore when somebody asks for it. In other words, there is no possibility for somebody to accuse Dublin Police Department of deliberately deleting a record that could have existed. Is that already well established, taken care of, so that there's no trouble waiting to happen?
So if I can speak to the fact that the videos are kept on a server maintained here by the city. City IT maintains the whole server block. The people that have access to the videos would be the administrators of the system. Videos can't be deleted off of that system unless it's authorized by the chief, and that would be a very rare exception. Perhaps something that was a private moment that should not have been captured on video has to be approved by the chief of police. As far as the chain of custody goes, each video has an audit trail that's attached to it. So anytime somebody views it, accesses it, does anything with it, so our court liaison has to create case packets for prosecutors and defense attorneys, private citizens making Freedom of Information Act requests. Anytime anything like that happens where a copy is created, there's an audit trail that goes along with that. So as far as the chain of custody goes, the WatchGuard Evidence Library maintains a very good record of anything that's done with that video. And again, it can't be deleted by officers. It can't be deleted by anybody without authorization from the chief of police. So that's basically the controls that are around that. The servers, again, are maintained in-house so that we know that it's not on a cloud somewhere that anybody has access to. It's just within the city. So,
how often do you get requests for videos?
That's something I couldn't answer because I don't handle the FOIA requests. That would be through records, and that would be Griesmer handles our requests for video. She gets regular requests from prosecutors and attorney. As far as public records requests from citizens, I'm not sure what those numbers would be. Maybe Chief could answer that.
Yeah, I don't have the exact number off the top of my head. I will tell you it does not happen as frequently as we anticipated or were concerned it might, because the amount of time it takes to produce a video for a public request folds in the amount of time it takes for our record section to redact the things that are required to be redacted by law that go out. And I'll give you an example. If an officer is in a cruiser and they are on something as basic as a traffic stop, and they have their body camera on and the cruiser camera on, you have 2 points of record that are occurring during that event, which happens regularly each and every day for our agency with our officers. If their body camera captures any of the information on the data terminal that is personal identifiable information, that has to be redacted from the video before it can be released to the public, so that we aren't inadvertently releasing any personal identifying information the public would normally have access to through the body camera. So that is a very careful process that requires somebody from our record section going through and painstakingly watching all the video in real time, and even longer because they have to go through and make sure they capture everything. So for an event, it might take our record staff as many as 3 to 4 days. So, I mean, you're looking at almost a work week to produce video for a singular incident for public request. Our concern, even as we introduced body cameras, was that was going to potentially overwhelm our agency or our record staff, because that could be a full-time job in producing that video for the public. What we have found, and I don't know if this is unique to Dublin or just is unique to our industry still, because body cameras are not as prevalent as they will be eventually in the future in all policing agencies, is that we don't have as many requests that overwhelm us, and that's sort of my barometer for how many we get. If we had a number of requests, I would know from our record staff we probably need to start talking about increasing our staffing, because we're right now not able to capture or not able to work on all the other duties that we have because we're spending so much time working on body camera video. In my recollection, we have had probably 2 major requests from the media who have asked for an abundance of body camera. And on the other occasions we've had public records requests, they're usually a few months in between and they relate to a singular incident. On those occasions, for both media and public requests, because it takes that much time, we usually will reach back out and see if we can get more specificity on what they're looking for specifically, not to keep anything from anybody, but to make sure that we are giving them exactly what they're looking for. So, for example, if it's the news looking for a traffic stop or an arrest, we will ask them, do you want the 4 hours of that officer with the individual processing and everything, or do you want the actual contact during the traffic stop? Do you want it all? And we will produce whatever they request. It's just, it helps inform us how much time is it's going to be required to be able to turn that around for a public records request. I would say we don't have them as frequently as we thought we were going to, but they're probably, maybe 1 or 2 every couple of months.
Thank you.
I've got about 4 questions. And I was looking at the policy information that Rebecca sent out to us a while ago. And Chief, what is the Dublin Records Commission? It's in the update material, the policy and procedure information that we got.
Yes, sir. That is the body that establishes the durations for retention of records. And so our point of assignment to that commission is Director Somerville. So unfortunately, he's not here tonight. He could talk in much more definitive terms on how often they meet, but they assemble periodically to go through all of the records that are retained in the city of Dublin from city produced or public produced documents and how long those will be kept. So any adjustments or amendments that would be made to either our retention for body cameras. They set the minimum requirements for the duration of retention within the city.
So are those city staff persons, or is it a commission that's composed of more than city staff, community persons, outside legal counsel? I mean, who do you know how
I
that?
don't know. Yeah, I don't know for certain the entire body. I do know that there is a legal staff representative who is part. I know our court administrator has a role in the records commission, and then Director Somerville from the police department is part. The full extent of that body, I don't know, Judge, but I can certainly find out between now and the next meeting, or have Director Somerville answer that question specifically when we come back together, or in writing in between now and then as well.
Okay, well, that's one. And however we share the information is fine. Obviously, I would want everybody on the committee to have access or know that information. So that's one. I was reading that we have, I guess, in the department, a technical services bureau director. Is that right? And
Yes, that's correct. That's Director Somerville.
that's Director. Okay, and then what is an operations bureau commander?
That is Lieutenant Latanzi currently, but that is the lieutenant or bureau commander who is over the operations section, typically our patrol section. And currently that is Lieutenant Latanzi.
Thank you.
And Judge,
And
I just pulled up, I'm sorry, I just pulled up the Records Commission information on the City of Dublin website. It consists of representatives appointed by the city manager, the director of finance, the law director, and a citizen appointed by city council to serve a 3-year term. It looks like the most recent or upcoming meeting for the Records Commission in the city of Dublin is Thursday, June 24th, 2021 at 9 a.m. in City Hall. Looks like that's a public meeting.
Thank you, Chief. I also wanted to say this. I think that when Lieutenant Latanzi was talking about the review of video images, video recordings that have been captured, and talking about that being done with every officer on at least a trimester basis, I think is a good practice, and probably a better practice is to do it more frequently, because I think that leads to transparency, which I think is obviously important in building trust with the community. And I thought that Esau's question about how often do you get requests for videos was a legitimate type of community question, a community interest type question, that although you wouldn't know that answer right offhand, it's probably the type of information that you want to collect and be able to respond to, so that, again, because it's the kind of question I think community people would ask in terms of trying to understand how transparent or how accessible the police department is to the public, that you were able to answer, if not directly, in short order, just like you pulled up that stuff on the computer just now. So those are all the thoughts and questions that I had. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge. I can go back to our records supervisor as well and see if we can't pull that out. I just don't have access to the number off the top of my head, as you said. And you make a good point. It is a function of being able to share what we have experienced and catalog and capture that someplace. As it relates to transparency, it also is a reflection of how much interest we have, I suppose, in people requesting that record as well. We certainly are obligated to provide that if somebody or anyone asked or requested that documentation. So I just want to make that clear too, that we would provide that record for anyone who asked, because it is taxpayer funded, and that's exactly the point on the Records Commission as well, establishing and making sure how long at minimum we are required to hold on to those records, and specifically as it relates to body camera video.
Chief, this is Imran. Just a little segue and also kind of compounding on your discussion. I know you said there's about a 1 week of period to get the video out to the community if there's a request. But what if it's like from one police department to the other police department? Does that take same amount of time, or is it a different protocol and procedures followed on that?
Yeah, that would be provided. That would not require the redaction that requires releasing it to the public. So the regular production of body camera video in preparation for court is different than release to the public or the media. That is a entity outside of the police department or the justice system that wouldn't necessarily require that redaction.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Anybody else have any other questions for the chief or the corporal on body-worn cameras? It's important subject matter.
I might have some after I think about it some more. So I might need to ruminate on it overnight.
Well, Chief always says that staff is willing to come back. And that would include you, right, Corporal?
Absolutely.
I just want to offer for the group, the corporal was willing to cancel a vacation day, as a matter of fact, and to join us on his birthday tonight. So I applaud his commitment and willingness. I'd be remiss if I didn't highlight his commitment to making sure that we were providing the right information and that he was here for us to help answer those questions he's intimately aware of as the manager of our body camera program.
Great. Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. All right. Well, we've got another kind of major agenda item to deal with. So let's go ahead and move into aspirational goals. And Chief, it's back in your court. I do also hope that we can incorporate some discussion about the update that was provided to council as well, to just give all of this some context moving forward here.
Yes, sir, Judge. So as we mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, there are a couple of requirements that were folded into the resolution that formally enacted both the Community Task Force and the Chiefs Advisory Committee. And so from a council perspective and from a task force perspective, specifically, the obligation to return a finalized report from the task force for recommendations to City Council is on a timeline that would need to be achieved by August of this year. Additionally, as a reporting requirement for the Advisory Committee, we were given the task of returning periodic updates to Council to inform about our progress and the things that we are working on as an advisory committee as well. So we tried to reconcile those two updates to council, and on May 4th presented both a memorandum from the community task force and the advisory committee to council to give them some awareness of what we've been working on previously. As far as the timeline, and I'll ask Mr. Shoji to jump in here too if I miss anything, but the timeline for the community task force report to council. The deadline is August, unless they ask or are granted an extension. The deadline is August in the return of that report. The timeline for the next few meetings for the task force, in June, they are expecting to come together with all of the recommendations from the subcommittee and including the recommendations from the public safety arena, those that we're going to talk about here in a few moments, in June, with the hope of then figuring out what work needs to be done to finalize those recommendations during the July meeting, and then August would be the presentation to council of the full community task force report. So for us today, we met in between our last meeting and today with the co-chairs and with Mr. Shoji to talk about drafting some aspirational goals from the public safety perspective to be offered to the task force as part of their comprehensive report. And I'll pause there to let Mr. Shoji fill in anything that I may have missed or correct anything on the timeline.
Chief, I think you covered everything I would have. Thank you.
Excellent. What we have sent out, and I think we sent out maybe late last week, Rebecca helped put together and send out to the committee. We wanted to give in advance what are the draft bullet points we came up with for the public safety recommendations to the task force for their overall comprehensive report. I will tell you that in bringing information together, I looked at 3 documents to help design some of these bullet points, and then I took my lead from Judge and Ajmiri and Isao during our conversation with the chairs from the task force in the discussion to build sort of the framework for the recommendations. So the 3 documents I looked at in trying to compile some thoughts for us to discuss today were the Beaverton plan, the diversity, equity, and inclusion plan from Beaverton, Oregon, that the city manager found that became the framework for the community task force. I also went back to the document I sent to the advisory committee at the beginning of our time together, the Principles of Procedurally Just Policing from the Justice Collaboratory at Yale Law School, the January 2018 report that we briefly talked about at the beginning of our time together. And then the third document I found was the University of Michigan Division of Public Safety and Security Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Plan. And that was a plan that covered from, I believe, if I am recollecting correctly, is 2016 to 2020. So I used those documents to help develop some bullet points for a recommendation or for some consideration for the advisory committee, while also folding in the discussions we have had as an advisory committee. So as much as we can hit multiple targets with our recommendations, I was trying to capture the discussions we're already having in framework, while also projecting forward public safety aspirational goals that I think are advantageous for us to present and lift up to council as considerations for well into the future. And so I'll briefly go through, just to keep it as succinct as I possibly can, the purpose statement that you have in the document, and then just the categories under which those recommendations and bullet points are captured. So in the document we sent, the purpose statement, we envision a community public safety partnership that values diversity and is dedicated to respecting differences, committed to equitable and procedurally just practices, and promotes intentional inclusion to create an environment where all community members and stakeholders feel welcome, protected, and safe. And so underneath that purpose statement, we've captured bullet points and recommendations under 4 categories: promoting public safety and sense of security, community engagement, transparency and accountability, and diversifying police personnel. And while I could walk through all of the bullets, I want to make sure we leave space tonight to just talk about or share any sort of reactions or reflections you may have had in taking a look at the document thus far. And so, Judge, I'll turn it back over to you for the conversation or recommendations and feedback on the suggested aspirational goals.
All right. Thank you, Chief, for the overview. a lot of time was spent on this. I'm saying that to the committee. Rebecca, thank you for not only your involvement, but your willingness to be available to take emails and calls from, I'm going to say us, meaning everybody, but mostly from me. So I would say to the committee that we looked at that Beaverton plan because that was, really the basis that the task force was working from. And then I don't know where Chief gets the time, but he looked at these other sources as well. And I would say that we can have open discussion about this, but I can't really imagine that the task force wouldn't be appreciative of just getting this, let alone us moving on to talk about action items, I think is the terminology that goes with this, which is where Dr. Gadam, I think that you really like to be at, action items. Okay, look at what we've got here in these categories, and then how do we, make them come to life and be relevant in the areas of diversity, equity, and inclusion for the department and the city moving forward. I hope that you got a chance to look at the memo as well, and I'm just interested, like the chief, on getting your feedback. And maybe Ajmiri, maybe Isao has more that they would like to interject right here, but this is what your leadership tried to do along with the chief in terms of moving, the discussion forward on behalf of the committee task force into city council. So I'm not asking you to grade us, but I'm just asking you to give me your thoughts on and feedback to what you have in front of you and where we might be able to do more, pare it down, or have some discussion about the action item side of things. And we got almost every community partner here, so I'm gonna be quiet now and listen to your input.
I also want to say that I would like to hear from our community partners just because we spent a lot of time on it. And I do want to get some just productive criticism too, because I don't think this is a super, I don't think this document is end all be all, right? Like we want to make sure that this is collaborative, it's growing, it's a living, breathing document that we can go back to and change as we look into more and more of our experiences in our lives and see what else we can do to help the community.
So yes, I looked into that. To be true, I mean, just once I looked into that, it's yes. Chief not tried, but added everything and whatever we discussed over the period of last 9 months. In my world, I mean, just from my personal experience, I always say actions that needs to be measured, and it has to be in each category. I mean, just if you have more than 3 to 5, nothing gets done. So I would recommend in each category, I mean, just have 3, ideally 5 max, but provided by the data, how it is currently over the period of years. If you have data, that's great. And next year, I mean, over the period of next 12 months or every quarter, we measure it. Chief, you provided a lot of other data. I mean, you police department maintains a lot of data and you make a lot of decisions. I really admire and appreciate that. But here, I mean, for this purpose, for this meeting and for this committee to be successful and to feel good about ourselves, just I would recommend to recap 3 to 5 supported by data. I mean, I won't say everything is supported by data, but just as much as we can, and we show the progress. And with city manager, city council, everyone can see and appreciate your hard work. I mean, I know you're doing a lot of hard work, but that needs to be seen by the various departments and public. I think that will give the credit, and also we all feel proud, a part of the community, and we feel that we made a difference. So looking at everything, it's not possible, and everything, I mean, just, yes, we have tried to do many things, but if someone asks specifically, what is the biggest difference? It goes too vague and no one gets anything. That's my 2 cents. Again, I could be wrong, but that's my, it's my feedback.
I would add that having seen what the other groups have done in their respective areas in the task force, we in this instance, the chief and the chair and co-chair, they really have gone beyond expectation, I believe. This is really far more than what the other groups have done in their areas. And I'm not just saying from the number of bullet points perspective, but the thoughtfulness that went into each and every one of them. I definitely do think that in terms of presentation, or perhaps in terms of prioritization, we perhaps would want to make it clear where our priorities would be and I definitely think that Dr. Gadam's point is valid when it gets combined with the other groups. This will be far more, I think, in terms of bullet points, because these are the goals, and if we're going to be adding action steps or the metrics to measure every one of them, it would be a document that is probably a little bit more than they would have planned on including in their final draft. So I think we can prioritize what we want, perhaps save some of the items for further discussion or for DEI plan number version 2, as I'm sure that something like that is coming down the road.
I wanted to also add, first of all, thank you for all the hard work on this draft. It's amazing. I can imagine the power brain going on in the conversation in that room. So thank you, because I know time is a precious gift. I do agree with both of the comments being shared. In education, we live in the world of goals, and we always think about how do we set ourselves up for success, right? And what would be achievable in a certain amount of time. So we can look at our draft. We have a couple of lenses. We can look at it from short term, long term, phase 1, phase 2, because there's so many great goals in here. It does not need to happen all probably at the same time. And then I'm also thinking there's a couple that could just be almost like merge in a way. For example, I'm looking at track and prioritize community trust building initiatives. And we also have develop a variety of diversity and equity inclusion engagement. Some of the things could be merged because I believe it's under a same big umbrella goal. We just need to maybe zoom in a little more and say this one and then add on the other one. And then my other suggestion is just a wording suggestion, because I'm a word person. The term minority, would like it to be changed to either minoritized or global majority. And again, thank you for this amazing draft that is going to get us started into actions and the next steps. So thank you.
I like the idea of phases. I think it provides us a focus for each stage instead of trying to do everything at once. So thanks for that.
And,
If I could pop in for 1 second, some of our conversation with the lieutenants and the chief, we're kind of in that goal phase, which would be like granular goals that we could accomplish, within several months, and then 5-year goals, and then, a 10-year goal. We took that part out because we didn't want to convolute it too much, but I'm glad that people are thinking that way, and we can definitely reflect that in some document to share with everyone.
I definitely appreciate the input too, and I would say this, that we still are responsible for turning in something at the end of the year too. And, so we can give the task force potentially a pared down version of goals and aspirations and action items, and then continue to work on the stuff that we really want to focus in on, and then report to council on when it's time in August or September for us to give our report as well. So I'm all for paring this down, prioritizing things, and maybe giving big umbrella categories and something for the task force to chew on. And I think that Chief, June, and if they need something by July, if we give them something in June and then tell them we'll have the final thing to them by July, I don't see how they could be offended by that. So that's all. Those are my thoughts.
Can I add one thing to make life easier? Just one, since I said I was going through the document again. So I would say again, I just is my comments. I'll take the feedback. So, for example, I mean, we have 4 items here. I would recommend the first highlight is promoting public safety and sense of security is the main title. How do we do that? Under that, there will be 3 things: community engagement, because a lot of public safety in the first portion, a lot of stuff community engagement is included. For example, chief has attended the community events, I mean, small or big. So that can be first thing is under public safety and sense of security. First point is, okay, we are going to enhance community engagement. How do you measure that? So we identified 5-6 diversity groups, and we are going to attend at least once a quarter. Just kind of we touch base over the period of 12 months. We'll make sure we go to each of the community events once identified and engage and listen to the community members. That way, just we are engaging and also communicating. That will enhance the community engagement. And second thing, transparency and accountability. This has more has to do with the reporting and sharing the data with the public, and just most of the times it's what Rebecca does. So basically, just whatever we have done here, just we communicate. For example, the event last month happened, minor some Asian Americans. So just basically how we do that. I mean, we proactively and afterwards we make sure we communicate and send a message within certain time, within 1 week or 2. Just I'm throwing something up, Chief, to get an idea. And last thing is diversifying police personnel, right? Maybe diversifying is a big word, but just kind of maybe diversifying and educating, right? I mean, training, because making sure the police personnel are more educated than before on just kind of training programs related to diversity, equality, and what are the main themes. So that's my 2 cents. Again, I mean, maybe we can have a meeting or off meeting, just identify what are the 3 things in each category we want to address. And that will be a simple report for you because you don't have a lot of time to talk about all these things. Again, that's my 2 cents. I'll stop here and wait for the other comments.
That's very helpful, actually. Haven't heard from Susan very much tonight. Like to get your input, Susan.
Thanks, Judge. First, I want to echo what was shared. Just looking at these documents, it's clear that a lot of really mindful consideration went into it, and it's an extremely helpful jumping off point to have these conversations. I naturally lean towards a lot of the same things that folks have already shared. Just being in the field, we're always about measurable goals, and so I think in addition to the recommendations to kind of, it's all so good. I don't want to cut anything out, but really trying to focus on what is maybe the first step. So like folks were saying, phases and things like that. And then we use, it's late in my day, so I'm not going to remember what each of the letters stands for, but we use the acronym for SMART goals. And so really thinking about, thank you, fine friends who are nodding, you know what I'm talking about. Really thinking about making things measurable so that, as the doctor was saying, we can not only for the committee, but for the community say, here's what we're looking at, here's what we did, here's where we were successful. On another coalition that I'm a part of, we had a rough first year of that because we tried to do 85 different things in our strategic priority, and that didn't work. And so we really narrowed it down to literally 3 for this next year. And so just really thinking about how we can capture those SMART goals. I guess I don't have real clear guidance to give on, and I would look to the chief and the agency to kind of think about what are your key priorities to kick this off. We can have ideas as well, but if there's areas that you really want to make sure to focus on first, just so that we can help you guide, provide guidance from the committee about developing those goals with a primary focus.
Susan, before you mentioned SMART goals, I started typing. Anyway, I completed it.
Excellent.
Yeah, I just want to thank oh, go ahead.
Sorry, I just want to re-echo everybody's comments, and I completely agree that this is a wonderful start and a blueprint that will help us guide with next steps as a committee. I definitely want to piggyback on Dr. Gadam's recommendation that we probably need to just break it down into a more project specific goals with the timelines associated. And taking one step further, I think we have a couple of other partners that we will be using, not only this team, but that is the city council as well as the community task force that ISO is part of. I think we need to find out what are those goals that are a top priority on all 3 of us, and those would be the common goals as a Venn diagram, and we focus on them because we will probably have more synergies created from other support systems as well. And then we come back and then find out, okay, if among those, common or commonalities of goals, if our priority or our team's priority is not there, then we prioritize another list of 1, 2, or 3 items that the chief wants to be delivered in next year or so. So I think there will be like parallel efforting, one within the team that we have to focus on as a priority for next year, and then the Venn diagram overlap with other 2 partners like the task force as well as the city council, what they are expecting us, as a support role or as a leader to have their deliveries, delivered in a compound manner. So I think there's the two phasing of the tasks that I'm thinking that will come out of it. Again, putting back on Dr. Gadam's comment that we might have to just treat it as a project plan and associate some milestones as well. And back to Susan, as she mentioned, that we really cannot undertake everything under the sun. We just have to prioritize that in 2 different phases, because that will show our performance and put some metrics around our measurability as well as service delivery as well. So I'll just stop at that.
Okay, well, there's a couple thoughts that I have is that that the task force asked us to do this public safety component of their presentation to city council. So I think we can pare it down for them, but right now it looks like the Chiefs Advisory Committee it has the potential to be an ongoing committee. We don't know that the task force is going to continue in any way, shape, or form because the resolution said that they would be in existence for a year. If you read through that document, and what the next iteration of the task force might be some sort of city advisory committee on diversity, equity, and inclusion, or something like that. And what that advisory group might want to do might be different from what the task force did. And certainly we're not being held to the strictures that we are given by trying to assist them in putting together this component of, the report that they give to city council. So I think, we have our own thing that we have to turn in at the end of 1 year as well. And and in terms of measurables, guys, maybe there might be one or two things that we can get to have a measurable outcome on for the year. But the type of conversation that we've had and the things that we put down as goals and aspirations for the future are the work we've been doing. And just like you're saying that you can tell that there was a lot of thought that went into this, well, it's all of our collective thought that has gone into this. And we've tried to come up with a document with which the chief, also, which will benefit the department, which is what this task force maybe was set up to do, but certainly what we decided we wanted to do as a group to help the department. So maybe I'm a little defensive, but I think we've been doing work that you can look at from this document and what we'll be able to produce by the end of our 1 year together, so that this inaugural Chiefs Advisory Committee can say that it did good work on behalf of the community. And I get what you're saying about the other measurables and what we might be able to do, but we're doing work, and it's evident that we're doing work. And I don't think we should shortchange ourselves on that.
I think I definitely agree with you, Judge. I think there's been a lot of wonderful ongoing conversation. This is our 9th meeting, and I still believe there is a couple of things, like for example, when we talk about reviewing policies, that are huge things, that if we're talking about getting community input, that is a long process. So that's one of the things that is in our document that we may have to decide, when are we going to do this? When in the priority list are we going to do it? Because I would like for us to do it all, but I don't think we will get to do it all. But we will get us started and get going in a very good place. So there are some things that might be a little more time consuming, and then there are other things that are ongoing conversations that are already happening here in this platform as we educate ourselves about different initiatives, as we participate in things. I do think some of them do fall into the ongoing, but then there are other things like getting community input on certain policies and revision that may be a longer process. So something for us to consider too.
Thank you. I agree. I understand.
Judge, if I can jump in, then I appreciate all the feedback again, and I'll offer from the group. Sometimes outkick my coverage is the phrase I like to use. My ambition sometimes exceeds my capacity, but it just as all of you have mentioned and said in each one of our conversations, but again here tonight reiterated, it's our eagerness and earnestness and investment in wanting to do the right work collectively as a group together to making sure we are considering what does public safety look like here in Dublin and what should it look like in the future. Again, this was an attempt really for us to throw all the ideas out on the table. I think we've had great reflection tonight on how we might be able to organize this a little more effectively, and certainly Rebecca and Lieutenant Tabernick and Lieutenant Latanzi, I'm certain were paying attention because they're who helped ground me in the reality of the X's and O's of execution in how we accomplish this going forward. And certainly, I'm going to lean on Corporal Howard and Officer McCloskey as well as part of these conversations. We can go back and try to resort and then try to get that back out to the group. I would like to get something that meets the timeline for the task force, so we don't give them anxiety over accomplishing that outcome of returning a report to the city council from the task force perspective, but paring it down, identifying measurable goals, doing it in phases are all notes I've taken tonight, so that we can go back and retool, but also keep with the spirit of what we're trying to accomplish here. And to Judge's point, I just want to reflect to the group. It was intentional at the beginning of the meeting for me to share that work that is happening at a state level, because I want to give credit to this group for helping inform those conversations and discussions and recommendations. And just as I look through the assembled members we have here tonight, and certainly Yanling equally as part of that, we have such a powerful connectivity to such wonderful leaders in this Chiefs Advisory Committee. We could not be more grateful to have the members here joining us, because I really do feel like we're doing something special here collectively here in Dublin that will have the power to help inform conversations that are happening in Central Ohio and eventually throughout the state as we continue to have discussions about the future of policing in our community, the state, and this country. So thank you again for all that reflection. We'll go back and do some work and make sure we send out a document that's reflective of our effort in trying to reconcile all of the feedback we had today and still meet the deadlines for the task force, and also project forward for us what the work looks like for us collectively ahead.
I just wanted to, put this out there. If at any point before our next meeting, I'm not volunteering everybody, I'm just volunteering myself. If you want me to look at it or give it another read, see if there's a patterns of where we're repeating ourselves, I will be more than happy to be a proofread of that document before our next meeting.
Thank you, Stella. I'll take you up on that.
All right, anyone else have a comment on this particular agenda item? We're not as bad as we normally are on time, so I'll ask if there's anything for the good of the order before we close out. And we can do it.
I would just say there's no public commentary for this meeting.
Okay.
Judge, if
yes.
you don't mind, I just wanted to add, I'll ask Rebecca to send this out in a more professional document, but we have open recruiting right now for an upcoming hiring process. That test is going to be June 26th or June 27th, both at 10 a.m. at Scioto High School, but the posting for submission of applications for police officer is now open until June 20th at midnight. And anyone that you know that might be interested in making a difference in joining our team can go to joindpd.org to get more information. And I'll just ask Rebecca, like I said, to send that out to you so you have that.
Great. Thank you.
Lieutenant Latenzi, is it okay to share that posting with the community at large once it's public?
Absolutely. I would encourage you to share that as much and as often as you can.
Thank you.
I would add anyone that you have conversation with who has interest, curiosity, or questions about that process or our department, please point them in our direction. We would be happy to have those conversations on an individual basis with anyone who has any sort of interest at all.
All right, Chief, do you have your roster list in front of you of everyone who's here?
I do hear somewhere. Yes, sir. What can I help with?
I just would like to go down the list or from the bottom up to see if there's any comments or events or anything that anybody wants to offer for the good of the order before we close out. So whoever was the last person that you mentioned as being in attendance, if you'd come back up the ladder, that would be great.
I'm tracking you, Judge. Yep, absolutely. Ms. Villalba.
Nothing from my end. Thank you.
Very good. Mr. Shoji.
I'll just share that I've been hearing some positive comments from the, I guess, mainly Japanese community that I'm in touch with about the recent communication coming out of the city of Dublin as well as the police department and how that adds to their comfort level. I was obviously happy to hear that, and I wanted to share that with you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Ingram.
Nothing new on my end. Just appreciate the comments and participation from everyone. I tend to listen a lot more than I speak. That's not true. In this group it is, but I shouldn't say that. I just appreciate everybody's contributions to this. So thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Mr. Malik.
Thank you, Chief. I was just unmuting myself. I just want to thank everybody for for the work that you're doing here. It's very meaningful, and I cannot appreciate the call that I received this week earlier from a situation at the department level that there were one of our officers was dealing with a member of our community, and then when I reached out to our community in a reciprocal manner to kind of find out what resources we can bridge with the department, it was very heartwarming to see the response. And I'm working on collaborating a meeting with the chief and the department here in next week or so. And again, the idea that the work that we are doing is not only in silo, it is this very community oriented work. And when you see that kind of response from the community, specifically from the Muslim community that is part of Hilliard and Dublin and vicinity, it was very, very heartwarming that everybody was very appreciative of the way the department is handling and making the reach out. So I just want to thank on behalf of the Muslim community for the work that the department is doing, and also how valuable our work is considered here. So that just wanted to appreciate that. So thank you.
Thank you very much for your help this week as well in connecting us to some resources to help our community members. Ms. Ortega.
I just echo what everyone said. I'm just appreciative to be a part of this committee and this team as we work together. And Stella jumped off, but I wanted to say a special thank you and recognition to both Courtney and Stella for surviving a school year that no one had any experience in how to do that. From our own experience in providing services in the schools, it's been a wild ride, and I can only imagine from a teaching standpoint as well. And just for all of us to keep in mind as we continue in this committee's work, the next big upcoming transition for so many families and students as we move into summer, their structure again will be disrupted and changed, in some ways good and in some ways challenging. And so just to continue to think about families and some of the stressors they might be experiencing and how we can continue to support throughout the community.
Susan, I have 3 days left. Don't write me off yet.
I know.
Listen, a lot can
when-
happen in 3 days.
When Stella was offering to help revise that, I was like, listen, you are so close to being done. You're already offering your time away and you haven't even finished this school year. So yes, you can do it. You can do it, Courtney.
Thank you. Mr. Justice.
Nothing at the time other than thank you for your time and attention. I know it gets increasingly challenging over this past year to do so. So thank you. It's been a privilege to be a part of this and to continue to do this good work.
Thank you very much. Dr. Gadam.
I said enough today. So first of all, thank you for all the service police department is doing. I mean, it's always positive feedback and from the community, and you all are going an extra mile to make sure it's well communicated and just doing your best. Keep up the hard work and passion, serving with passion.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Hawk?
Thank you. I just wanted to say that I'm excited because soon we will be in person and we can all meet each other. I've met a few of you already, and I look forward to seeing all of you in person and getting to know you better and serving the community more. Thank you.
Very good. Yeah, equally look forward to, again, getting together and being in person for a meeting in the near future. So thank you.
Chief, a
Judge?
quick one. Are we going to have a barbecue at the first one?
We will try to find some way to appropriately celebrate being able to come together as a group. So, and we certainly certainly want to make sure for Rebecca's sake and for our sake, if we can get a photo of that first meeting to capture and memorialize this group. Again, I think that's critically important for the work that is going to be done in the future and future iterations of this Chiefs Advisory Committee to commemorate this special group coming together for sure.
I've tried to take screenshots at different times, but it hasn't quite worked out. So I might show you some outtakes one day.
And Judge?
Yeah, I can't get beyond the fact that this is an anniversary date and that it was difficult circumstances under which we came together as a Chiefs Advisory Committee. And, when I look back over the last 9 or 10 months, I honestly can say that what this committee has become and what the relationship with the police department has been is more than what I had expected. And I can honestly tell you all that I'm very happy and very grateful to have the opportunity to serve with you. And on those occasions when I say I think that we're doing good work, I mean it wholeheartedly. And I'm just now beginning to appreciate that we're laying the foundation, hopefully, for a committee that is able to assist the chief in the next 3, the next 5, the next 10 years out. And I'm proud to be a part of that process. So that's what I've got for tonight. You all stay well, stay safe. And if we could have a motion, unless Chief, you have something to say, a motion to adjourn.
I move to
No,
adjourn.
sir. No, all I have is thank you all for your leadership again. And Judge, thank you for your leadership in bringing us together again tonight.
I now move to adjourn.
Okay. Is there a second?
I second.
All right. Thank you. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.